Today, we begin with a massive escalation that defense officials had tracked, warned about, and braced for in recent weeks. A missile barrage that unfolded not over hours or days, but in terrifying minutes. Minutes that lit up the skies over Israeli cities with streaks of fire and smoke. Minutes that sent millions of civilians rushing into bomb shelters across the country. Minutes that tested every layer of Israeli air defense like never before. What Iran did today crossed a line that the entire international community had prayed would hold. And when that line shattered, Israel did not hesitate for even a single second. They responded with determination, with overwhelming firepower, and with absolute resolve that no aggression against their homeland would ever stand unchallenged. For weeks now, there have been signals, not from official Iranian government channels, not from formal diplomatic communications, just quiet intelligence indicators that Iran was preparing something far larger and more destructive than anything previously attempted. Iran has been provocative, yes, but they have been methodical and patient in their provocations against Israel. Their moves have followed a certain cadence, a tempo, almost a choreography. But what set off alarm bells across Western intelligence agencies this week was that the choreography suddenly stopped. Analysts who monitor Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps' activity know the key indicators extremely well. The dispersal of mobile ballistic missile launchers from hardened bunkers. The activation of secure military satellite uplinks reserved only for wartime operations. The movement of fuel and oxidizer trucks toward hidden launch positions. The sudden disappearance of senior IRGC commanders from all known locations. All of that went completely quiet over the past 96 hours without explanation. And whenever Iran goes this quiet, every intelligence professional in the world knows it means something catastrophic is about to get extremely loud. Early this morning, American early warning satellites and Israeli radar installations detected what they described as an unprecedented simultaneous launch sequence from multiple locations deep inside Iranian territory, including underground silos that had not been activated in over 5 years. These are the kinds of strategic weapons platforms that Iran only uses when they are signaling something terrifyingly specific to the world. Either a full-scale military confrontation, a direct existential challenge to Israeli sovereignty, or a complete abandonment of all previous restraints and red lines. Western intelligence observers could not determine which category this fell into, or whether it fell into all three categories at once. But what they did know with absolute certainty was that Iran was fundamentally changing its entire military posture in the region. And when a nuclear threshold state shifts its military posture this dramatically without any explanation, every government on Earth pays immediate and urgent attention to what happens next. The emergency alert issued by the Israeli Defense Forces tonight was not normal by any measure. It was not routine. It was not a symbolic gesture designed for political purposes. It was desperately urgent and carried the weight of national survival. Senior military officials, after an emergency war cabinet session, described Iran's attack as massive, coordinated, and the single most powerful missile barrage Iran has ever launched against Israeli territory. But a massive barrage only achieves its objective if the defender hesitates or fails. Israel did neither tonight. In fact, their defensive response today was among the most comprehensive and technically impressive military operations we have seen in modern warfare history. Within 8 minutes of the first confirmed launch detection, Israel activated every tier of its integrated air defense network simultaneously. These were not just the standard Iron Dome batteries that intercept short-range rockets. These were Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 interceptors designed for ballistic missile threats. David's Sling systems targeting medium-range cruise missiles and advanced electronic warfare platforms that Israel only activates when facing a strategic-level threat. Tonight, the Israeli Defense Forces confirmed that Iran launched over 350 missiles and drones in this single coordinated barrage, including advanced Fatah hypersonic missiles, Shahab medium-range ballistic missiles, and shade attack drones launched from multiple directions simultaneously. Israel intercepted the vast majority before they reached populated areas. Israeli forces struck back before Iran could assess the effectiveness of its own attack. They hit the launch complexes that fired the ballistic missiles. They hit the underground command bunkers coordinating the entire operation from Iranian soil. They hit forward staging areas in Syria and Iraq that were preparing to launch a devastating second wave. In other words, Israel targeted the entire offensive architecture that Iran had spent years building and positioning. The command networks, the logistics chains, the reload capabilities, and the communication systems that would have sustained a prolonged bombardment campaign against Israeli cities. This is what made the international warning so desperately urgent tonight. Iran's barrage was not just a political statement or a show of military force for domestic audiences. It was a fully operational military assault designed to overwhelm Israeli defenses through sheer volume and saturate every layer of protection. It represented the kind of attack that could cause mass civilian casualties if even a fraction of missiles penetrated the defensive shield. And Israel, understanding the magnitude of that threat completely, responded with devastating force. Not recklessly or without careful targeting. Not impulsively or driven by rage and emotion, but strategically with precision that demonstrated years of detailed planning. They did not strike Iranian cities or civilian infrastructure. They did not attack targets that would cause mass civilian harm. They hit every military node connected to the attack. They hit every facility that enabled it to happen. And here is where the story becomes even more alarming for the entire region. American intelligence officials now believe that Iran's unprecedented barrage was specifically designed to overwhelm and collapse Israeli missile defense systems by launching from more directions and with greater volume than ever attempted before. Iran wanted to find the breaking point of the Iron Dome and Arrow systems. They wanted to discover whether enough missiles fired simultaneously could create gaps in coverage. But instead, the exact opposite happened tonight. Israel did not break or bend under the pressure. They demonstrated a layered defense response that was so fast, so synchronized across multiple platforms, and so devastatingly effective that even Iranian military commanders were reportedly shocked by the failure rate of their most advanced weapons. You do not force Iran to recalculate this dramatically very often. But today, Israel absolutely did. Regional defense analysts speaking with international media under anonymity described Iran's massive barrage as a desperation gambit designed to test whether Israel could truly handle a maximum effort strike. But Israel proved today that they remain both technologically superior and operationally unmatched in missile defense anywhere in the world. Their interceptors were not only launched within seconds of each detection, they were networked so precisely across multiple batteries that incoming missiles were engaged by the optimal system at the optimal altitude. That level of integration matters enormously because it shows something Iran desperately hoped was not true. It shows that Israel has solved the saturation problem that Iran believed was their greatest strategic advantage against Israeli defenses permanently. It shows that Israel is not merely reacting to threats. They are anticipating, adapting, and systematically defeating them. As reports continued flooding in throughout the night, we learned far more about the staggering scale of Israel's response. The Israeli Air Force carried out over 60 precision strikes against Iranian military assets across 3 countries, forcing the emergency evacuation of multiple IRGC headquarters. Israeli intelligence units targeted Iranian weapons transfer networks that had been actively resupplying Hezbollah in Lebanon over the last several months. Israeli special operations forces operating in classified locations reportedly destroyed Iranian drone assembly facilities. This was not just a defensive intercept operation against incoming missiles. This was not just a proportional retaliation designed to restore deterrence. This was a full-spectrum military response across every domain of warfare. This was strategic supremacy demonstrated under the most extreme pressure imaginable. And strategic supremacy is precisely what Iran has struggled to challenge since this confrontation began escalating. For every technological advance Iran has made in missile range and accuracy, Israel has countered with something that renders that advance ineffective and obsolete. Remember, Iran thought the sheer volume of 350 simultaneous projectiles would be enough to overwhelm any defense system. They thought launching from multiple countries and directions would create impossible coverage gaps for Israeli radar systems. They thought their new hypersonic missiles would be too fast for any existing interceptor to track and destroy. But tonight, the exact opposite happened before the entire world. Israeli defenses held firm against the largest barrage in history. Israeli radar tracked every single incoming threat from every direction simultaneously. And Israeli interceptors successfully engaged hypersonic targets. What makes this moment so terrifying and so consequential is that Iran's unprecedented barrage happened at a time when the Iranian supreme leader is under enormous internal pressure. IRGC hardliners want visible military victories against Israel to justify decades of military spending. Political moderates want a negotiated solution before the economy collapses completely under sanctions. The Iranian public wants relief from poverty, inflation, and international isolation. Regional proxy commanders want proof that Iran can actually deliver on its promises of destroying Israel. The supreme leader is balancing all these impossible demands. And when leaders under that kind of pressure launch their most powerful military assets in a single desperate gamble, they are not acting from confidence. They are acting from fear. They are acting from the terrifying realization that their strategic position is deteriorating. The White House statement released tonight and distributed immediately to every allied nation was designed to signal clearly that the United States will not permit this escalation to spiral into an uncontrollable regional war. Officials said plainly that Iran's massive missile barrage was inconsistent with any acceptable standard of international conduct. That is the carefully measured diplomatic language that means this was an act of war and there will be consequences. You do not hear that level of severity from the White House unless the situation has crossed every threshold of concern. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister addressed the nation in a resolute, powerful, and unwavering speech broadcast to the entire country. He said tonight Iran launched its most powerful attack, and tonight Iran failed completely. He said, "We will exact a price so severe that no enemy will dare attempt this again." He said the people of Israel stood strong tonight, and we will always stand strong. These are not political talking points crafted for cameras. These are declarations from a nation that has just survived the largest missile attack in its entire history and emerged with its defenses intact and its resolve strengthened. Here is what makes the situation even more dangerous going forward. Iran's barrage was not launched in isolation tonight. Along with the massive missile strike, Hezbollah also launched unprecedented rocket salvos into northern Israel from prepared positions. Houthi rebels in Yemen fired ballistic missiles toward the Israeli port city of Eilat. Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria launched coordinated drone attacks. All of this happened within the same 3-hour window of coordinated aggression. When Iran activates every proxy simultaneously with its own direct military strike, it signals that the entire regional architecture of Iranian military power has been committed. Intelligence analysts are now considering several deeply concerning possibilities about what comes next. One is that Iran is preparing for a prolonged multi-front campaign of attrition against Israel. Another is that Iran is attempting to provoke an Israeli response so devastating it triggers international condemnation and diplomatic isolation. A third possibility that worries officials the most is that Iran is now willing to escalate. But today, Israel took that option off the table with overwhelming military effectiveness. They did not wait for diplomatic permission. They did not defer to international timelines. They did not rely on defensive systems alone and hope for the best. They struck back with precision, speed, and a ferocity that left no ambiguity about their capabilities or their willingness to use them. What we are watching now is a test of national will and military endurance. Iran wants to see if sustained pressure can eventually crack Israeli resolve and defensive capabilities. Israel wants to demonstrate that no volume of missiles will ever be enough. The United States wants to prevent a full regional conflagration that draws American forces into direct combat. And the world wants to prevent this crisis from crossing the nuclear threshold that would change everything permanently. Tonight, we have heard from multiple intelligence sources who are monitoring Iranian military movements in real time. They say Iranian forces are dispersing remaining missile assets to survivable locations. They say IRGC communications have shifted to emergency wartime protocols. And they say Iran's decision to launch this unprecedented barrage is likely part of a maximum pressure strategy intended to fundamentally reshape the regional balance. But Israel is not retreating or showing any sign of weakness. In fact, Israel is surging additional forces to every border and maintaining peak military readiness across all branches. Their response today, swift, devastating, and surgically precise, sent an unmistakable message to Iran that the cost of aggression will always exceed any possible benefit. And it sent a message to the world that Israeli technology, Israeli courage, and Israeli determination remain unbreakable even under the most extreme circumstances imaginable. As the coming days unfold, we expect more details about what Iran truly hoped to achieve with this historic attack. But what we know tonight is that the international response was timely and critical. It reinforced the alliance structures protecting regional stability. It exposed the limits of Iranian military capability for the entire world to see. And it demonstrated that missile defense technology has fundamentally changed the calculus of modern warfare. What happens next depends entirely on what Iran decides in the coming hours. If they escalate again, this night will be remembered as the beginning of something far larger and more dangerous. If they step back, Israel and its allies have already proven they are fully prepared and completely capable. They have shown they are ready for whatever comes next. And tonight, for the first time since this crisis began, Iran appears to be genuinely uncertain about its next move. Tehran is quiet, too quiet. And when Iran goes quiet after its most powerful attack fails to achieve any strategic objective, it means they are recalculating everything they believed about this conflict. It means they are choosing their next step with the terrifying awareness that their best was not good enough. Because tonight, Iran learned 3 lessons it will never forget. Israeli defenses cannot be overwhelmed by volume alone. Israeli retaliation is faster and more devastating than anything Iran can absorb. And the world saw tonight exactly who stands on the right side of this conflict. This story is far from over, and the consequences of tonight will echo for years to come. But tonight, one thing is absolutely and undeniably clear. Israel survived the most powerful missile barrage in its history and emerged stronger. Iran's strategy of overwhelming force through sheer numbers has been proven fundamentally flawed, and the balance of power in the Middle East has shifted decisively in ways that Tehran never imagined possible. And we will be here watching every single detail as the next dangerous phase of this historic confrontation unfolds.